Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of the Book It podcast. This is actually episode number 2, my second attempt at doing a new show that we have here on my YouTube channel, where I take the opportunity to not just talk about road to Indy racers, but those maybe coming up through the ranks, those running over in Europe. Also going to spend some time throughout this off season and through the entire 21 season, jumping in as well to talking to people within the industry, some team owners, maybe some officials. Got a lineup of IndyCar drivers that are going to join us as well. Just really an opportunity for me to have maybe a wider spectrum than just what I do in the Road to Indy Insider podcast as well. I had a chance, of course, in my first episode to talk to Bryce Aaron and Jackson Lee, the two drivers that were nominated for Team USA. Of course, they were just across the pond the last couple of weeks, running in both the Formula Ford Festival and the Walter Hayes Trophy event. I have both of those guys coming on next week. I think Bryce is going to be on Tuesday. And then we'll have Jackson Lee on Wednesday, kind of give us a little insight into their experiences running with low density racing over in Europe. Some incredible tracks, of course, Brands Hatch and Silverstone. I'm here in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, middle of a quarantine here before I head back on the road. Essentially a pretty wild 4 months. Road to Indy events, IndyCar events, a ton of karting events as well. Got a chance to drive a little bit myself, which was great. But really excited about what we're doing here on the YouTube channel. For those of you who are coming on, maybe for the first time, please do me a huge favor. Press the subscribe button. Just below there, you'll see a bell too. First, smash the like. Give me a like. That'll help the channel out in a big way. Press that bell button, and you get notifications of any time we go live, anytime we have new content here. We're going to have a lot coming, a lot of stuff coming. Today, though, I'm really excited about this show because I've watched this young driver throughout his young career. He's worked his way from karting now into the very early rungs of open wheel Formula car racing and F1600. I'm going to bring him in here right now. Again, my name is Rob Howard. If you don't know, let me bring in here right now Mac Clark. Mac, how are you, my friend?
Good. How are you, Rob?
I'm good, dude. We're actually not that far apart. So I talked to Bryce Aaron last time in the first show. He was in England. You're literally 45 minutes down the road in Campbellville, Ontario. You're not very far from me at all, which I think is great.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk. Let's jump in here. I'll kind of give a preface for those who may not know Mac. And this is one of the reasons we're doing this. We're trying to kind of introduce you to the drivers that are very early in their career that you could very possibly see in the NTT IndyCar series coming down the line or wherever they may end up, IMSA, whatever it may be. Mac's a young driver who ran with a number of different organizations, karting series and karting teams. Was able to score some big wins before moving to cars. Did his first year in F1600 up in Canada, the Toyo Tires series, Motorsports, Shannonville, Mont-Tremblant, Calabogie, those events, and got that first season in the books. And then this year came back again, even with all the COVID programs, was able to step up, set new track records at what is now Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. He wins the championship. So you come on as a champion, Mac. That sounds like a pretty good lead-in, right?
Yeah. Thank you. No, this year was incredible. There were a lot of highs and also a lot of learning in my second year in the car, and we closed it off really, really well.
So first things first. Let's. I almost want to do this to everybody I talk to. I want to get your origin story. How did you come to get into cars? You know, again, let's do the stereotype. You're from Canada, so I'm surprised you're not playing hockey, right, or something like that. But I know I followed your dad. Your dad did a lot of racing. Was a top national Masters driver in karting, represented Team Canada overseas and around the world in Rotax competition. Let's talk about how you got into karting first and into motorsports. What was the hook?
So from the time I was, 6 or 7 years old, I was running around the go-kart track with my dad, and I loved cleaning the go-kart or just sitting in it, watching his races. And then my interest kind of slowly got larger. And I started getting more into Formula One and, watching it every Sunday with my dad. And then when I was 9 years old, I asked my dad, can we go karting? Like, I want to try it. And the first year he said no. He said, oh, all your friends are playing baseball. Why don't you go play baseball? So I went and I played baseball. And then
you know what that was? That was your dad not wanting to give up his own racing at that point, right?
That was him not wanting to give up the seat.
That's it. So keep going.
And then the next year I came back and I was 10 years old. And I'm like, Dad, listen, I really, really, really want to try this. So we did, and we went out to our local track, Trevor Wickens track in Hamilton.
Yep.
And I got in a kart for the first time, and I absolutely loved it. And I just immediately, the bug bit me. And from then on, it was just we slowly progressed in the karting. So I started off at a small club in Flamborough, actually where Robert Wickens and James Hinchcliffe raced when they were younger.
Yep.
And then from there, it just kind of progressed, to the regional level and the national level, and then eventually the international level.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. So what was your first club, Waterloo?
Yes, it was, Waterloo Regional Kart Club.
That's where I started in 1995. I love that, or at Flamborough Speedway. I started at Binghamton Park. But it's okay. So you get into your karting program. You're running club races. You start running nationally as well in Canada. But then you stepped up and did a bunch of U.S. racing as well. And watching you come through those junior ranks, it was a matter of time before you started getting better. How many years was it before you think you started getting to the place where you're like, you know what, I can win any race I get into?
Yeah, so I think my first international competition was the winter of 2017, so early 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my last kind of very successful junior karting race was, winter of 2019. So it was about 2 years in the program. And that was really those were my first 2 years of heavy two-stroke competition. And I'd say it definitely took me about a year and a half or so before I got, super confident, where before a race, you're sitting on the grid among 60 other of the best drivers in North America.
That's it.
And you have that feeling and know that you can go out there and you can win.
And the level of competition, I think, at that particular kind of racing is unbelievable. National level racing here, the Supercars USA Winter Series, Florida Winter Tour, Challenge of America. It's amazing competition in karting. You're in junior at that point, 2019. So you essentially wrap up your career, a karting career to a certain extent in the winter. Then you start going F1600 racing. If you look back now, you're 2 years into your kart career now. That's kind of where you're going. If you look back, what are your biggest successes in karting? Let's put a little exclamation point or a little period at the end of that. When you look back, what are the big wins that you'll always take forward?
Well, kind of when I almost finished my karting program and transitioned into cars, right before I ended, I won round 3 of the SCUSA Winter Series. And that's just kind of like the standout point in my mind, where I knew I had kind of gotten to the point where I could win and lead races at a national level. And then from then I felt like, obviously you can always learn more in karting, and I still love going back and driving. I'm driving the shifter karts now in Canada.
Nice.
But I felt kind of like complete and then ready to move on to cars after that win.
Well, that was obviously a move. Let's talk about that. Your dad, I know, a very experienced guy in motorsports and karting, as I had said. Where does the conversation start, and how does it start about you potentially moving to cars? I know that you guys weren't in a super hurry. You wanted to do some testing first. Can you talk about how you made the transition from karts into cars?
Yeah, so we started kind of thinking about it later 2018, just searching around, talking to different people, kind of getting a consensus on what we thought would be best. And I mean, the Formula 1600 program in Canada, whether it's the Toyo Tires Ontario series or the Formula 1600 Canada series in Quebec, is incredible. It's just the best, track time value for money that you can get.
It is.
And so
keep going.
We just continued to research it and look at the different options. So we did a few test days in late 2018, and I kind of felt more comfortable in the car, and we did some more testing early 2019, and then we signed the contract with Brian Graham, and we were ready to go racing.
And let's talk about that, because I've said this many times, and I don't think everybody knows the whole how great that program is up in Canada. Whether you're running the Toyo series in Ontario or the Quebec series, the venues that you get a chance to race is unbelievable. You look at some of the drivers who have come up and actually run with Brian Graham. The list of alumni from Brian's team: Joseph Newgarden, Spencer Piggott, Connor Daly, all these drivers that came up to Canada to run F1600 when they were coming out of karts. Before they get into cars, you did that. You race what is Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, Shannonville, Calabogie, as I mentioned. You run Mont-Tremblant, which is an amazing racetrack. The Canadian Grand Prix as well, right, in Montreal in support of Formula One. Tell me this first. Your first laps at speed when you really started getting comfortable at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. That place, it takes a little bit of, I'm going to say it takes balls.
It does.
Whether you have them or not, because I'm not gonna throw Megan Gilks under the bus because she's a hell of a driver herself. But it takes guts to be fast in that car going over turn 2. Tell me about your first laps when you really got things rolling at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park.
You have to have respect for that track, 100%, or it will bite you. And it's just crazy. And I mean, especially with the Formula 1600s, because we're on the Toyos. And, they're treaded. We're not running on slicks. Yeah. So the car is always doing this kind of 4-wheel dance as you go over, something like turn 2 where it drops 40 feet. And and you go over the crest and it's a little sketchy, and you collect your back up, and slowly, as I progress, and especially in my second season, I'd go over to like fearless. I knew exactly what the car was going to do. I was extremely comfortable with the car kind of stepping out, and it just takes a while to gain that comfort. But I remember the first few laps I went over 2 and especially 4 as well. I was like, oh my goodness, hold on.
Hey, Luke, and that's the thing. I'll say Formula 4, but Formula 1600, it teaches you car control, right? That's what you're talking about, being able to have that car and that four-wheel slide on a regular basis, but still have it in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still kind of have like that. You want to have that four-wheel movement, and I hate the word drift because, drifting a race car on a road circuit isn't really anything you'd ever see, but it's like this four-wheel movement, and you have to learn to control it to benefit you as well.
Yeah, understandable. Okay, so you do the first season. Obviously, first season's always tough. It's kind of been the way for the last number of years, right? You're a rookie 1 year, you come back the next year to try to win the championship. What were some of your struggles? So people that may be coming into F1600 racing for the first time, what were some of your struggles in your opening year in a car?
Definitely the transition from go-karts to cars. And I think you'll hear a lot of drivers, tell you that. And a lot of people always want to know the explanation behind it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's almost like the only things I could take from karting were my mental approach and my racecraft. So, knowing how to lead a race, knowing how to make a pass.
Yeah.
That was, those are key skills that you develop in karting. But in terms of driving the car fast, it's much different than driving a go-kart.
The vehicle dynamics are so different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And especially on the treaded tires, in the go-kart, your butt's in the seat and the seat's basically on the ground. So you can feel everything that's going on. But in the car, you got to be patient. You got to really try to feel the car. It's a learning process for sure with the suspension and the weight, and you get less track time as well.
That's true. That's very true. I go to this all the time when I'm talking to young drivers in the road to Indy or wherever. How much different was Matt Clark at the start of 2019 and the start of 2020?
It was definitely a big difference. And it's like anything, you see, my dad told me, because we were talking about it, he says, I see you when you drive now. And he's talking about 2020. He says, I see you when you drive extremely confident. You know exactly what the car is going to do every lap, and you drive like it. And he says he can tell, and I feel that. You kind of come into a series new. You haven't really got your head around everything that's going on yet, and you're still like in full learn mode. And then as you progress, you kind of take it all in, and then you have that all in your back pocket for your sophomore year.
Yep. Obviously, with COVID and what happened with kind of the shutdown, shutting down races and everything that happened. Let's talk a little bit about that. You, of course, coming back for your second season, this is your chance to shine. You want to win the championship. How did you deal with that mentally, being out of the car? Or were you out of the car for a long time? Were you able to get some testing, or were you out of the car for quite a while?
I was out of the car for quite a while, and the scary part was not knowing if the season was going to happen, because I really, really was looking forward to it. I moved to Britain West Motorsports, and this was my year. This was kind of like my time, and not knowing whether or not the season was going to happen was really nerve-wracking. But I'm glad it did. But being out of the car for that period of time, I'd say from we did some US racing in January, so from January to probably June, I was out of the car.
Wow.
And that's a long time.
It's huge, right? It's crazy. So let's talk about Britain West Motorsports, another a family that I've known forever since I started actually working for Performance Racing back in the early 90s. The Klubines have been around for so many years. David Klubine, of course, now who is the man in front of it. It was his dad, Oliver, for many years. Tremendous guy, obviously a Hall of Famer when it comes to Canadian racing coming down the pipe. What was it like moving and working with the Klubines? Because I said great family, and they know what's going on in terms of an F1600 car.
They're like my racetrack family. It was like an immediate connection. The first race weekend, I knew I'm like, these are the people that I want to be with, and I feel like I can win with them.
That's awesome.
And it wasn't just the speed of the car. It was the team environment, so family oriented. Like we'd always have lunch. Laura would make lunch for us, and we'd all sit and eat like socially distanced. But it was incredible. It was just so much fun. We were extremely professional and always wanted to get faster and always working towards that goal of winning not only the race, but the championship, but at the same time, having so much fun and such a good environment. And I think as a driver, as well, when you kind of show how motivated you are, that motivates your team. And I just really knew that I had a great team underneath me, and that, winning that championship, that was our goal, and we were going to do it.
Let's talk a bit about the season itself, how your momentum got going. You were able to win some races early, and then another track. I got a track record, I think, at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. How do you do that? Man, there's a lot of guys that have been running cars there. Where do you lay a lap down like that? That's amazing.
Thank you. Mosport, I should say CTMP is the official name now.
It's old school though, right? Mosport, come on. I know.
But it was getting later in the year. We did 4 weekends at Mosport, so it was our third weekend there. So we had a lot of track time and quite a few test days in, and we were really dialing in not only the car but myself, and we were rolling, consistently laying really fast laps. And it came down to the qualifying session. You got the new boots on. It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
And the lap just worked out perfectly. I started a really good flying lap, no traffic, and then I caught another one of the other competitors going down the back straight. I had to go about halfway down the back straight, pulled out and passed, finished the lap, and I rolled across, and I was sub 128. At Motorsport in the 1600, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
That's good for you. So let's talk about the final weekend. You win the championship. What are your thoughts rolling around having that title on the resume?
I remember crossing the finish line in the third race because I needed to win. I didn't need to win all three, but I knew if I won all three, it locked it in. And this was on the fourth weekend. And I remember crossing the finish line, and on my in lap, it was just like so much emotion, just like joy, happiness, like just knowing that I've had this goal for the last 2 years, and this year I set out to accomplish it, and I did. Yeah. And that feeling was just incredible.
Hey, before we talk about where you want to go in 2021 and what the plans are, let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned the 4 months of shutdown for COVID. Where are we going to go racing again? You got out of the car in January, all the way till you guys started going again midsummer. Like me, I ended up announcing, I think, 38 or 39 or 40 events on iRacing. You jumped pretty deeply into the sim racing world as well. Give me an overview of how deeply you're into the sim racing and how you see it helping you as a driver.
Yeah, so I think like most drivers, the March kind of like 13th to 20th when COVID, the world kind of realized like, oh my goodness, it's here. Yeah. All the real racers hunkered down and got into sim racing.
Yeah.
And it was a great time, and sim racing just kind of like took off like this. And so now, I've built myself a new rig. I'm on iRacing, 2-3 times a week, because I know it's very important for me to develop not only my skills as a real driver, but a virtual driver as well, because that can open doors, and not to mention, it just keeps me sharp.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a UK-based sim team called Ronin Sim Sport, and I've done a few events with them, including the 24 Hours of Spa, which was crazy fun. It was my first real big endurance race, and that was incredible. I felt like I was actually there.
That's awesome. Yeah. What about the transition? Like I know, I talked to a lot of IndyCar guys. Of course, they had their IndyCar challenge, and guys that have done a lot more of the sim racing. The transition for you, I don't know whether you're driving the Skip Barber car or whatever car that you want to drive to be able to go. Did you drive anything in specific to train potentially for the F1600 car, or was it just any kind of repetition in any kind of driving?
I think at first I started off with the Skip Barber car, like you said, because that's kind of similar to what I was doing, on the real track. But then I kind of dove in deeper, and it was really about, and it was some weeks it was just, okay, I'm going to try this series because why not? It looks fun. And I think your ability to adapt to a track and a car, especially in something that's relatively new to you, like sim racing, that's really is what is going to help you as a real driver as well.
Is this something you potentially see as a parallel? Like I know you and I were talking earlier today. I'll throw this out there because you're 16 years of age, right? So you're at that point where you're still, let's say 6, 7, 8 years away from getting to the NTT IndyCar Series or wherever you end up being. I think so much is going to change over the amount of time. Sim racing, as you said, is making a lot of big moves forward. It's developing like crazy. iRacing is exploding. A lot of different stuff that's happening. Is this something potentially that you could be doing parallel, where you're going to be doing all your car racing, but you're also going to be at the same time really focusing on the sim racing side?
100%. And I can see even the business side of sim racing just going crazy.
Yeah.
Because anyone can do it, right? It's a lot more affordable than, say, real racing. So therefore, the public has a larger access to it. People can relate to it more, and then the business side starts to take off. So I definitely see myself, staying in sim racing and continuing that passion as well, and alongside my real driving.
So talking about real life racing, what are the plans for, or can you tell me what are the plans for 2021? I know I ask everybody that, they're like, oh, I can't tell you yet. It's off the record. So I know a lot is going on. I just can't talk about it. Are you at a place where you can talk about what your plans are for 2021?
I can tell you a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll take it.
So it's going to be closed wheel north of the border.
Okay.
And open wheel south of the border.
All
and
right.
That's all I can say.
All right. Well, hold on. Listen, hold on. We didn't talk about your sports car racing. You did. You did the F1600 racing, but even last year as well, right? You did some sports car racing or some testing, at least with sports cars.
Just a little bit of testing. So between Chump Car, or even I got to drove a Porsche GT4 around CTMP.
All right.
Just experience like that. And like I said, with the sim racing, it's just jumping in a new car on a new track and learning it. And I feel like the quicker you can learn as a driver, the better a driver you're going to be in some situations. So, just kind of getting a feel for everything.
I was just going to say that. I like the fact that, so you got the F1600 car, you did some sports car racing, you're doing the sim racing, and then you got the shifter kart as well. I think those who may not know a lot about karting, a shifter kart's like pretty much like an Indy Lights car kind of thing, right? Like a GP2 car. The power to weight ratio is crazy. What did you think jumping into the shifter? Were you at Hamilton doing it, or were you somewhere else?
My first day was at Hamilton, and I remember literally, I think the sentence that Trevor Wickens said to me before I jumped in was, he said, listen, you're going to do one day in this, and it's going to be today. And after you're done, you will never, ever want to go back to single speed ever again.
It's fun, isn't it?
It's incredible. It is my favorite. The feeling of that go-kart on new tires somewhere like Motorsport Karting Center.
Yeah.
So I did one of the regional races there over the summer. And that go-kart on new tires is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's an animal. I love it so much.
Well, here's a perfect example. Your F1600 car is overpowered, I guess, under-tired to a certain extent. You have not have a lot of horsepower, but no tires.
Mm-hmm.
Where a kart is so much grip with 50 horsepower to shift a kart like that. It just rips off the bottom. It's amazing, isn't it? I love it.
It's incredible. And there's a reason why you see a lot of top professional drivers go back to stay in shape. Like, for example, Oliver Askew this weekend is competing in Vegas.
And he's doing well already. See how good he's doing?
He's doing incredibly. He topped the time charts, I believe, yesterday at the end of the day.
It's good to see. And guys like Alex Palou and all these guys jumping in there for sure. Let's so let me hit you with this then. You talked about what you're doing next year. Closed car racing, closed top racing up in Canada. You're going to do open wheel racing down in the States. You're not going to give me any information. That's a bunch of crap, but that's all right. I can take it. What's the ultimate dream? Where do you want to get to? Are you laser focused on one thing, or are you kind of open to go in different directions?
If I can drive anything with four wheels to make a living, that is my goal. But kind of up here, you have like the ultimate dream, and that's the NTT IndyCar Series.
Yeah.
And I feel like anyone on this side of the planet in North America that's a young driver, that's kind of who they're looking up to, and that's where I want to be. That's where I want to see myself. Excellent.
Now, here's the one thing about you, and you and I've talked about this for the last number of years, and I think this is a really cool deal, and I really want to spend some time on this. Obviously, you're very focused on your education as well. One of the things you have said, and we talked about this, your dad was there when we discussed this at the karting track, was that you really want to be a race car driver, but you also have this side you want to be an engineer. You'd like to be an IndyCar race engineer. So if you don't get there in the seat, you're going to get there. You'll be on a timing box somewhere, like working for somebody as a race engineer. That's something you have in your mind as well. Talk a little bit about that, because I really like that kind of two-prong approach, because even if you do make it, the amount of knowledge you're going to have is, having that desire to be a race engineer. I got to think the vocabulary, what you're going to know about the race car and how you're going to talk to your own engineer is going to be really advantageous.
Either way, I'm going to find a way through the front gate.
All right. Good for you.
But it kind of all started when I was karting. And I remember some days my dad would just drop me off at the shop and he'd be like, listen, go listen to Trevor and go build a go-kart or two. And it was just kind of, learning about the different parts in the kart. And remember, we talked about when I got really comfortable in the go-kart. And that was when I'd come in and I'd already basically have an idea of what I'd want to do to the go-kart to help it out a little bit. And I kind of understood all the components in my mind. And from then on, I realized that I wanted to be a racing engineer. And I think that you are extremely correct to where, if I have a very extensive knowledge of engineering, that's going to help my driving career. And then my driving career is also going to help my engineering career. So they kind of go hand in hand.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if I'm not going to make it as a driver, I'm definitely going to make it as an engineer. And no matter what I'm doing when I leave high school, I'm going to post-secondary.
I like that. So that was my next question. Do you have a school planned out where you think you want to go?
I have my British citizenship. So it may be across the pond. We don't know yet.
We've seen that before as well. Prescott Campbell's over there at Oxford, actually, as well. So that's interesting. Here, I got a couple of people getting some stuff in here for you. Elaine Sinclair, who's a big Road to Indy fan. We'll talk nicknames a little bit. She says, hey, I read that as Super Mac. Is that a potential nickname, Super Mac?
I'll take that.
I like that. But hold on. Do you not have Jimmy for Jimmy Clark on the back of your helmet?
Well, if you could see, I had my full picture set up, but it got cropped a little. So I have it on my helmet stands on the left side of my room. And on the back of my 2 painted helmets I have, it says Jimmy on the back.
I love that. I love that. One of the things we did do, I was going to show a couple of pics of what you're doing here. Let's have a look at your hot rod as well. So this is your car with Britain West Motorsports. You can see the Toyo tires there. Tell me what you felt like driving that car for the first time.
I just connected with it. It was like putting on a glove that fit you perfectly. Yeah. I just like molded into that car. And I remember the first test day, I came off after the first session, and I'm like, yeah, I feel really comfortable in this car. I knew I could win the championship in it the next year.
That looks like Shannonville there. Am I correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. All right. So here's one that's kind of dear to my heart. I grabbed this off your Facebook page because I'll bring this up, and we talked about it before we came on. This is you winning what is the Can-Am Cup, which is I think the Al Craighead Memorial Can-Am Cup. Now, Al and I started this Can-Am Cup race, working with the guys, working with Brian Graham and everybody, and David Klubine to put on we're trying to get like an American-Canadian race. They've been running it every year as a special event, and that's very cool to see you have. I bought that trophy here in Cambridge. To have your name on it, the kid that I've watched coming up in karting, I think is really cool. Tell me what it meant to win that particular race as well, among all the other races you won.
That was an amazing day, and I knew it was an extra special day because it was the Can-Am Cup, and going out onto the track, I knew that for me to come off and to win that, it's kind of like a rite of passage almost.
Right.
Right. I felt amazing to win that, and to have my name on there with all the other guys that I've seen kind of graduate from the Toyo Tires series.
Yeah.
And like you said, Shane Yancey, who's won it the most times. I think he's won it in total like 7 or 8 times.
He won like first 5 in a row or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
It's crazy. Yeah. But to see my name on there, and especially that connection with you is super interesting.
Yeah.
And I really love that.
It's to have Al. We of course lost Al a number of years ago to cancer, and he was probably the guy that was the most focused and the most in love with junior formula racing. He was my editor at Formula Car Magazine as well before we lost him. And I always think about him on his birthday, which is Memorial Day weekend. We used to go down to the 500. Here's a question for you, and I like to ask people this: you came up in karting. Here's a shot of you racing here. Are you ever going to leave karting?
No, never.
That's what I thought. Right? It's going to be something that keeps you sharp for the rest of your life, or what?
Yeah, for sure. Rob, did you see who's behind me in that picture?
Let me go back. Look. Who is it?
It's my dad.
No way. That's awesome. That's Motorsport, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, listen. I had Eduardo Barrichello on. This is really interesting. I'll ask you this question. I had Eduardo Barrichello on after he'd won in Indianapolis in the USF 2000, and I asked him if there was ever a thought of him and his dad running the Rolex 24. And he said that was one of his ultimate dreams, that he and Rubens were going to run together. When are we going to see the Clarks racing something together? Is that going to happen?
I'm not sure, but I remember we've always kind of had this thing, maybe similar, not as extreme, but my dad raced at the Formula One Grand Prix a number of years ago. I believe it was 2014 or 2015. He did the CTCC, Canadian Touring Car Championship, and he podiumed at Montreal.
Okay.
And I was really kind of disappointed that we didn't get to go back this year, because my goal was to stand on the same podium as him. Because
I like that.
I think it would have been really cool to have like a father, like the thing about, the number of father-son pairs that have stood on that podium, the number is probably not that big.
It can't be very high. No, you're right. You're right. All right. So we're having a little bit of fun here in the last maybe 5 minutes here. Talk talking about travel, we go to a lot of racetracks. We go to a lot of places around the country, North America, the world. What's your favorite racetrack? What's your favorite track of all the racing you've done?
Are we talking karting or cars?
Well, let's go both. Let's go one of each. Let's start with karting.
Karting? Homestead, Miami.
I love that track too.
I love Homestead. And not only because I say that, and everyone's like, oh, it's because you won there. I'm like, no. I love that track. Reverse direction, normal direction, it brings like this element of physicality with the intense fields and the sticky tires. Yeah. And it's just true go-kart racing.
And you know what? And a track, I love it too. I always have. I first raced in, I think like 2002, I raced down there in the Florida Winter Tour. And it's a parking lot track. Like it's a point and shoot, a bunch of 90-degree corners with a big sweeper on the inside. But man, I just love that racetrack too. It's a lot of fun.
It is so much fun. And I remember my favorite at Homestead is hitting the curbs. I don't know why. I feel like there's two types of drivers. There's people that like curbs and there's people that don't like curbs. And I'm definitely a curb driver. And I just I remember in 2018 when I first went down there, we did a few days of testing before my first SCUSA event there. And I just immediately fell in love with that place.
Yeah. All right, let's go cars. Car racing. You've been at a bunch of great racetracks. What stands out? What's the one you would say was number one?
I'm gonna say it's a two-way tie between Mont Tremblant and CTMP.
There you go. A couple of iconic Canadian racetracks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Mont Tremblant's a fantastic track as well. All right, so I'm gonna go two things here. Let's go favorite city you get to go to when you're racing.
Montreal is incredible.
Okay, Montreal. And I'll spin this into it. Here's the question I've got for you. The other one. I'm gonna ask everybody this on these Book It podcasts. What's the best meal you've ever had? Because I'm a food guy, right? I love my food, pizza, beer. When you go somewhere, like if you go, like, hey, we go here, you got to go to this restaurant, you got to have this. Is there anything you have that is like your go-to thing every time you go somewhere?
I wouldn't say it's a go-to, but I remember one night in Miami, it was like a layover between weekends. I believe it was like Rock or SCUSA or something. So we were down in the States in Florida, and we actually stayed at a resort in Orlando, and there was this amazing seafood restaurant in the hotel, and it was after I won. So my dad said, you can have anything on the menu that you want.
Wow.
And it was just like boom. And I ordered, I think I had lobster tail and filet mignon. And that was the best meal I think I've ever had in my entire life.
That's a victory meal right there.
Yes.
That's a victory meal. Well, listen, that wraps things up. I appreciate it. We'll try to get your dad to tell us exactly what place that was so people know where they're going. But, hey, listen, I really appreciate you coming on and joining me here in this Book It podcast because it was fun to be able to get and sit down and talk to you. Watching what you did throughout the season this year, I'm super proud of you. You did a great job, and you must be excited, super excited about next year.
So excited, and thank you so much for having me. It was incredible.
Let's give you an opportunity to talk about your sponsors here before we wrap things up. Who helps put this thing together for you? Who helps get you on the racetrack? And we'll wrap that up. Give me all your social media as well so people can start following you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be.
Yeah, for sure. So for this year, my 2020 partners were MIR Raceline USA. They supplied my suit, my gloves, and all my kit. Incredible stuff. Awesome to form a new partnership with them for the 2020 season. I'll be back with them in 2021. And then from neck up, Bell Helmets, Bell Helmets USA. And I've worn a Bell helmet ever since I started.
Wow, good people.
And I remember I revealed my new helmet last year at Supernats, and I loved it, and I still do. And then we move on to Second Skin, which they've been supporting me since 2019, and they're a vinyl wrap company in the GTA. They wrap like high-end luxury supercars. Yep. And we might surprise you on weekend and do a wrap on the race car. That's a possibility.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then, that's about it for my sponsors. Okay. And I'd like to thank them for their continued support. And I know that in racing, you need to form these partnerships as you move on up the ladder.
Very true.
And in terms of my social media, I'm _ Matt Clark on Instagram, Matt Clark on Twitter, and Matt Clark on Facebook. So thank you very much, Rob. And yeah.
Dude, it's done. You made it. You made it through it.
I survived.
All right, but I appreciate it. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rob.
There he is, folks. Matt Clark, again, a tremendous young Canadian driver, just 16 years of age, came up through the karting ranks, was able to get a big win. He talked about running up front at the SuperKarts USA Winter Series back in 2019, then jumped right into a car in the Toyo Tires Ontario F1600 program. came back for his second season and really clicked with the Klubines and everybody at Britain West Motorsports. Watch for him to move his way forward. Obviously, the road to Indy is what he's looking at. USF 2000 down the road. He didn't quite give us the information of what he's doing. A couple of different programs. It sounds like full-size cars, tin tops in Canada, open wheel racing down in the U.S. It's going to be exciting to see what he does in 2021 and then potentially down the line. He's either going to be an IndyCar driver or he's going to be an IndyCar engineer, either or. And I think that's really exciting that he has that kind of dual focus of what he's trying to put together. I do want to thank you folks for joining me here again. If you haven't yet, subscribe below. Hit that like button. It's going to help my channel big time. Please press that like button. Put as many comments on as you want. Make sure you hit that bell. Lots more stuff coming. Actually, on my Road to Indy Insider, I'm going to have Stingray Rob tomorrow. He and I are hooking up for that. Next week, I've got Steve Whittick coming on to join me. We're going to do a season review of the Road to Indy. And then, of course, as I said, Tuesday and Wednesday, interviews with both the drivers in the Team USA Scholarship. Bryce Aaron and Jackson Lee will join me to talk about what happened over in the UK at the Formula Ford Festival and as well at the Walter Hayes Trophy at Silverstone. I appreciate you joining me here tonight, folks. We are done for episode number 2. My name's Rob Howden. Book it.